All right, so guess what's happening up in Canada, eh? Justin Trudeau is turning... Well, here, let me tell you. This is what people are saying. If Vladimir Putin did what Justin Trudeau has done to try and suppress the truckers, media and politicians across the Western world would be condemning his actions right now. Not only that, we'd be sending arms to Ukraine Nazis. That's how serious it would be. Even I tweeted about this. If they can deem protesters terrorists so they can freeze their bank accounts to squash their protest, then they can and will do it to you, or Black Lives Matter, or any time a protest actually starts working. This is what people thought Trump would do, but now Dems are actually cheering this on. That is correct. And here's Comrade Misty Putin. She says, I'm not sure what it is going to take for people to see that the things happening around you are about establishing complete narrative control and squashing dissent of all kinds. And that is a huge problem. Well, Comrade Misty, you're supposed to focus on how much you hate the person next to you, not so much on how you hate the people above you, okay? You're doing the wrong thing. You're supposed to turn on your neighbor. Okay. So what is going on? What are all these tweets about, Jimmy? I'll tell you. Canada, Trudeau invokes emergency powers. I was told they're emergency wartime powers. That's what I first read. Invokes emergency powers in a bid to end the protests. So the protest is working, and the oligarchy is shitting their pants, and they don't know what to do. So now they're doing things that they accused only Trump would do. What are they doing? Well, let's. By the way, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday activated rarely used emergency powers in an effort to end protests that have shut some U.S. border crossings and paralyzed parts of the capital. Rarely used. Boy, actually, this is the first time in Canada's history that it was ever used. So when you say rarely, you mean never. So that is Reuters, again, being dishonest. And that's why is Reuters being dishonest? Because the head of Reuters is also the head of, used to be the Pfizer, he still is the head of Pfizer's charity thing. So emergency powers being used on nonviolent protesters by a guy who used to do a lot of blackface. That's unprecedented. Under the Emergencies Act, the government introduced measures intended to cut off protesters' funding and took steps to reinforce provincial and local law enforcement with federal police. The blockades are harming our economy and endangering public safety, Trudeau told a news conference. We cannot and will not allow illegal and dangerous activities to continue. But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, boy, isn't it, said there's a Canadian Civil Liberties Organization. Isn't that nice? Boy, that still does its job. If that were the American Civil Liberties Union, they'd be actually calling for more censorship. But let's see what the Canadian Civil Liberties Union wants. They said the government had not met the standard for invoking the Emergencies Act, which is intended to deal with threats to sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Integrity. The Freedom Convoy protest started by Canadian truckers opposing a COVID-19 vaccine or quarantine mandate for cross-border drivers have drawn people opposed to Trudeau's policies on everything from pandemic restrictions to a carbon tax. Copycat trucker protests have also sprung up in Israel, France, Australia, and New Zealand, and soon coming to America. So they've really fucked up with this one. I mean, the establishment, because truckers have figured out that they can actually effectively protest. Unlike Black Lives Matter, who turned every city into a protest zone in the United States for a whole summer and got exactly nothing out of it.
They got 90 million out of
it. Yeah. I mean, the head of Black Lives Matter bought 3 or 4 houses. I know that happened. They got nothing.
How many mattered? A specific number mattered.
I don't know. I haven't looked into Black Lives Matter, but it certainly seems like they should have got something done, and they got nothing done. In fact,
you know what's upsetting? The people whose kids got shot, they were just doing stuff in their name, giving them nothing. That's who's yelling the most at them now.
Really?
Yep. And this is like this has happened with a lot of these. Like these families get nothing from. It's really messed up.
I just want to point out, too, that truckers in Canada are vaccinated at a higher rate than the regular rest of the population in Canada. They don't tell you that on the news, do they? That's right. 89% of truckers are vaccinated. So they're not anti-vax, they're anti-mandate and anti-being electronically surveilled and tracked forever with a bullshit COVID passport. That's what they're against. Protesters blockaded the Ambassador Bridge, a vital trade route between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit for 6 days before police cleared the protest on Sunday, while others have shut down smaller border crossings in Alberta, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Protests in Ottawa, the nation's capital, entered a third week. I don't understand why they won't just give in to the truckers. Well, I guess I do understand, but everybody else is getting rid of their vaccine mandates. They're getting rid of the vaccine pass mandate. You don't have to show a vax card in New York City. You don't have to show a vaccine card to go to a restaurant in Philadelphia where I'm going. California is announcing getting rid of their mask. Everybody's dropping. And there's 2 other provinces in Canada, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, are getting rid of their mandates. So what in the fuck is this about? Why would you go nuclear on your own citizens like this? Well, because that's the kind of pressure they're feeling from the World Economic Forum. That's the kind of pressure a guy like Justin Trudeau, who has a long life ahead of him, he wants to be working with the World Economic Forum, and they're fucking toadies. And he knows if he doesn't do their bidding right now, he'll be out on the outsies, just like Bernie Sanders is with those kind of people. And so he'll never be allowed to be elected again. So that's what's going on. Okay. The financial measures bring crowdfunding platforms. So now they've done this thing. So by declaring this emergency, Justin Trudeau now has declared those protesters terrorists. So the financial measure brings crowdfunding platforms under terror financing oversight. Authorize Canadian banks to freeze accounts suspected of funding the blockades and suspend insurance on vehicles in the protest. That's what they're suspending, the truckers' truck insurance. Can you believe this? Can you imagine if Trump did that to Black Lives Matter protesters? He suspended the insurance on their cars or their fire insurance on their house or froze their bank accounts? People would be painting swastikas on his arm and Hitler mustaches on his face, and that would be it. But since Justin Trudeau's doing this and it's against actual workers, no one gives a shit. I mean, nobody who votes Democrat gives a shit. Okay. What slide was that? What slide? So now the protesters are being considered terrorists. Why are they being considered terrorists? Because the people in charge are terrified. Isn't that weird how nonviolent protests make them shit their pants? Nonviolent. Violence they can handle. Remember Black Lives Matter? They were weren't they setting police stations on fire and stuff like that in Atlanta? I saw that.
With the free bricks for the
free bricks for the protest.
That's like that's my favorite thing.
So here we go. Let me see the slide. Canadian authorities have said about half of the funding for the protests has come from U.S. supporters. Toronto Dominion Bank last week froze 2 personal bank accounts that received $1.4 million for the protests. Wow. So half the funding came from Americans. So there you go. I was afraid only Canadians had balls. But it turns out there's a lot of Americans too. Isn't that nice? U.S.-based website Give, Send, Go became a prime conduit for money to the protesters after mainstream crowdfunding platform GoFundMe blocked donations to the group. An Ontario court last week ordered Give, Send, Go to freeze all funds supporting the blockade, but it said it would not comply. So tip of the hat to Give, Send, Go. Isn't it funny when you see who has any integrity or principles and it isn't who you thought it was going to be? It's somebody named Give, Send, Go. The Canadian Parliament must approve the use of emergency measures within 7 days, and the left-leaning New Democrat Party said it would support Trudeau's liberal minority government to pass the measures. Wait a minute. They're not a majority. They're a minority. Is this Trudeau's fringe movement? Ontario, which declared a state of emergency on Friday, backed the move, but premiers in Alberta, Quebec, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan opposed the plan. So 3/4 of the fucking country's against this. But you're still going to treat your own citizens like terrorists. Holy shit. Talk about Nazis. Turned out it wasn't Trump that was the Nazi. Turns out it was these liberals. So when fascism comes to America, it will be holding a Bible and carrying an American flag. I think I'm butchering that, but that's it.
Well, now it'll be wrapped in a rainbow flag. And
yeah, that's right.
like,
so Quebec's Premier, Francois Legault, said using emergency power risked putting oil on the fire. And he's right. Turns out he's right. Trudeau said the measures would be geographically targeted and time-limited. Ontario said it will speed up its plan to remove proof of vaccination requirements and lift pandemic. So they're doing what the truckers want anyway. So, Kurt, why the fuck do you think that they're being so heavy-handed with them if they know they're going to get rid of the mandates anyway?
Because Trudeau wants to look. You hear how he talks. Bill Maher had a good point about it, that how he sounds. He's like, should we even tolerate these people? But unvaxxed people are unvaxxed. Like,
yeah, that sounds like Third Reich talk.
It's crazy. And then Marianne Williamson goes, I'm surprised he did that. And Bill Maher goes, you didn't see the blackface pictures?
I know. Trudeau said the measures would be geographically targeted and time-limited. Ontario said it will speed up its plan to remove proof of vaccination requirements and lift pandemic-related capacity limits for many businesses, while Alberta ended its mask requirements for school children on Monday. So long story short, all of this is happening because the protest is working. Neo-lib corporatists are shitting their pants and abusing every power they shouldn't have been given, and they still can't stop this protest. And in fact, it's expanding all over the world. It's coming to the United States. It's in Israel. It's in France. It's in Australia. Here's a guy who's usually lost in democratic politics, and even he gets this one right. And that's why I'm showing it. Even a guy like him could get it right. He says, if any time you protest, they can freeze your bank account and label you a terrorist, that functionally bans protesting. It's absolute insanity not to oppose this. It's shocking authoritarianism. So
he's not thinking globally.
So even a guy who's out raising funds currently for the Democratic Party, who's fucking going to implement this shit, he's still against the idea that his favorite politicians are going to be for. And that's what makes me laugh about that. Go ahead.
Well, that's why Trudeau's got to show he's because this is almost like so much hinges on this punk showing he has authority.
Yeah.
When nobody respects him. And so he's getting more and more like the Game of Thrones prince that with his he's like a spoiled rich kid. And if he folds, that's it for the whole.
That's it.
The whole thing. Like it could happen anywhere. So he's actually got to be like the vector for all the hopes of
the WEF types.
Yeah.
Yes. So here's another. Michael Tracy says Trudeau says application the Emergency Act will be geographically limited, but it necessarily applies to the entirety of Canada. Limitations to the scope are purely at Trudeau's discretion. So if you live anywhere in Canada, you are currently living in a state of emergency. So here's what Justin Trudeau said in 2012. You ready? This is when he was the golden boy. Everybody thought he was a real progressive. When a government starts trying to cancel dissent or avoid dissent is when it's rapidly losing its moral authority to govern. I'll read that again. This is what he tweeted out. And I guess he's quoting. That's a different prime minister in 2005.
Yeah, maybe what his next tweet was, and I think Harper's a real asshole for that.
So let me read it again. When a government starts trying to cancel dissent or avoid dissent is when it's rapidly losing its moral authority to govern. So he's lost his moral authority to govern by his own words.
Or Harper's.
Well, he tweeted it out by his own sentiment that he agrees with.
That's going to backfire on him. Wow.
And and so again, the news media are corrupt liars. And that's why we do this show. If they weren't, how could I outdo them? How could my show be more popular than CNN if they weren't corrupt liars? So here they have the same corrupt liars in Canada. And so watch, they're trying to show a skewed version of the trucker protest, and the people called them out. Watch this.
Quick video here showing you CBC, showing a couple of people. Right? Look at this. Their camera, they're setting up to point in this direction. Remember that. Now let's turn around and show what's really happening here.
So that Canada corporate news cunts were setting up their camera, shooting it down the street where there was less people, making it look like it wasn't that popular of a protest. But if they would have turned their camera the other way, you would have seen all the people. And so they called them out for that. So that's the kind of garbage that they're doing up there. Here's another one.
I'm here today because I'm 65 years old, and for 2 years I haven't been able to live my life. I retired, and I can't do anything that I'm supposed to want. I mean, I retired a few years ago, and I can't do anything that I normally would do. I can't go to restaurants. I can't go anywhere. I can't fly, and I'm double vaxxed. Okay, I used to go to the doctor, and I would always say, should I get a second opinion? Do you remember that? Anybody remember that? That was a pretty common expression. What happened? The government's our opinion now, and we don't get a second opinion? Sorry, that's not where I come from. I'm here for free speech. I'm here for freedom of movement. When I was young, I could travel across Canada with my thumb.
I am so happy that the Americans and the Canadians are finally getting together for the same, I'm sorry, I'm French, I'm trying to find my words, for the same purpose. And I'm so happy that we could finally get together to do this. Freedom!
I ain't leaving. I'm not leaving. Not until this tyrannical government gets back into line and pulls its head in. They're mistreating the public. They are completely out of control with these mandates. And I don't even like calling them mandates, they're dictates. So I'm here and I ain't leaving until they back down. Peace, love.
Okay, there's music on that, so we got to kill it. Or else they'll demonetize the video for the music. So anyway, there you go. Crazy white supremacist, violent nuts. Oh, no, it turns out they're working class people who are making their voice heard, and then the government is shitting their pants over it. Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Philadelphia on February 20th. We just added a second show. And February 26th, back here in Los Angeles, go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows.